Today I'm going to show you how to make kombucha. Now I don't claim to be the kombucha queen, but I do know how to make a pretty tasty kombucha that my kids like, and that is winning to me because they are my toughest critics. So the first thing that you're going to need when you make kombucha is you're going to need a SCOBY. What the hell is a SCOBY? Okay, SCOBY stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast, and basically it is this. It's a cloudy, rubbery mass of bacteria and yeast that's alive, and it's basically going to be the thing that gets fermentation happening with your kombucha. Now, you're probably asking, where the hell do I get one of these? Well, if you happen to know somebody that is making kombucha, like myself, it's quite easy because every time I make a batch of kombucha, I generate another SCOBY. So I'm generating quite a few SCOBYs, and I keep all of my spare SCOBYs in my SCOBY motel here. You can see there's quite a few of them. So if you know someone that's making kombucha, easy, I'm sure they will be happy to share the love with you. If not, you can order SCOBYs online. When I first started, I didn't know anybody around here that was making kombucha. I ordered mine online. It came in the post in a cryovac bag with a little bit of starter fluid. So it's as easy as that. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a clean, sterilized vessel. Having things sterile in any fermentation process is really important. I've got a 3-litre vessel here. Now you're going to need your SCOBY, and then you're going to need some starter fluid, which is what I've got in this vessel here. Now your starter fluid is just basically some fluid left over from the previous fermentation, and it's got just more active constituents in it. And again, once we feed our SCOBY combined with this starter fluid, it's really going to get fermentation cranking along. Okay, so we've got our vessel, we've got our SCOBY, we've got our starter fluid. The starter fluid should probably be around 10 to 20% of the volume of your vessel. So this is a 3-litre, which is 12 cups. So this is probably around 1.5 to 2 cups of starter fluid that you're going to need. Right, the next thing we've got to do is we've got to feed our SCOBY, okay, because that's really what's going to kickstart the kombucha fermentation. Now, what do SCOBYs like to eat? They like to eat sweet black tea. Now, I've already made this sweet black tea and it's at room temperature. How I did that was I put 3 litres of filtered water in a pot on the stove. I brought it to the boil, I switched it off, and then I let it sit for 5 minutes, and then I added some black tea. Now, if you want to know more about the types of teas that you can use in the kombucha making process, I suggest that you Google that. There's plenty of information, and people do like to experiment with different kinds of tea, but the original and tried and true recipe of making kombucha is to use black tea. Now, you can use loose leaf tea, you can use organic tea, you can use tea bags. It's entirely up to you. For me, I have been using Lipton black tea bags. I like using tea bags because it's easy. Once I've steeped it, I can just pull them out quite easily. Of course, if you're using loose leaf tea, you're going to have to filter those tea leaves out before you actually put it into the vessel. So don't be too hung up on the types of tea. I'm using Lipton's and that's working quite fine for me. But like I said, Google it if you want to know more about the types of different tea that you can use. So I've brought my water to the boil, I've switched it off, I've let it go for 5 minutes, and then I've added in 4 tea bags, and I've let that steep for 10 minutes. I've taken my tea bags out, and then I'm going to add in around 150 to 180 grams of sugar. Now I know what you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to add sugar, added sugar. But the reality is you're not going to get fermentation without that sugar. That SCOBY is going to eat all that sugar up. So don't be stressed about the sugar that you're adding into the sweet tea mix, all right? So make sure that sugar's dissolved, and then just let it sit until it gets to room temperature. Making sure that it's at room temperature is really, really important, because if you are rushing things and your sweet tea mix is too hot or too warm, you run the risk of actually killing your SCOBY. So be patient, wait for it to cool down, to room temperature. Now, I've already got this. So once you've got your tea mix here, which I said again, I use 3 litres of water. Now that's, this is a 3 litre vessel. So this may be a little bit too much, but it doesn't really matter. And basically, I'm just going to tip this in here. And then I'm going to put a bit of cloth over the top. Now, you want the cloth to be breathable because airflow's got to get in there with the fermentation process. But you also want a tight enough weave that dust and crap and particles aren't going to get in there either and mess around with the fermentation process. Now you're going to put that in a shady spot. I usually just put mine up in the cupboard, on top of the cupboard there in the corner, away from direct sunlight, in a reasonably sort of coolish spot that's got some airflow. So, but don't be tempted to put it in a pantry or in a cupboard or anything like that because it's not going to get the airflow that it needs. Also, another thing, just put it up there and leave it. Don't pick it up, don't jiggle it around, don't poke it, just leave it go. Don't mess around with the fermentation process. And what you'll see start to develop is a SCOBY will start to develop, a really thin SCOBY on the very top of your liquid here. I'm going to put that up there in my position for around 7 to 12 days. And that should be ready to go by then. I've sort of found for myself that around 10 days is pretty good. Temperature will affect fermentation, okay? And again, you can Google all of the perfect temperatures on the internet, but you will find that when it's really hot, or if the room is really hot, fermentation will take less time. If it's the middle of winter and the room is cold, you will find that fermentation takes a little bit longer, okay? Really, the way you're going to know if fermentation is working is you're going to start to see that SCOBY develop on the top. If you're seeing that, you're good to go. Things are going okay, all right? So after about 7 days, have a bit of a taste. See what it tastes like. If you think it could be a little bit stronger, let it go for another couple of days. You will know when you've over fermented it because it will taste really vinegary, and you'll even smell the vinegar. I've accidentally let my kombucha go. I've forgotten about it, and all of a sudden you can smell this vinegar, and it's like, oh, I've let it go for too long. And that's completely fine. If you don't have time to get to it, this is going to be fine sitting in its little corner, much like these guys in my SCOBY motel, until you're ready to get back to it. But if you want to get started again, just drain it out and start the process again, because as you can see, it's not a very difficult process. So that's basically it. That's how you make your first fermentation of kombucha. You can use all 6 different types of vessels. I've got some going in here, and these are just sort of like 1 litre vessels. And yeah, so choose your vessel. Like I said, that was a 3 litre, and I've given you the ratios for 3 litres. Again, you can Google that stuff, break it down, work out whatever size vessel you've got, and you're good to go. So if you live locally in Ardrossan and you'd like to get started with making kombucha, hit me up. I'll gladly give you a SCOBY. I hope you enjoyed that today, and I'll be back with my next video, which will be the second fermentation. Take it easy. See ya.